You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
You are listening to Unpause Your Life, and this is Dr. Callie Estes, founder and CEO of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Also, Fix Failure to Launch is our newest project, and I want to welcome you to our fun and exciting show. My guest today is Darren Littlejohn, and he is a best-selling author multiple times, certified yoga teacher, Reiki healing practitioner, and much, much more. He's a recovering addict and a practitioner of Zen and Tibetan Buddhism, as well as a former mental health specialist. He has a BA in psychology, and he has worked in chemical dependency and acute psychiatric care facilities, God bless his heart, during college. I want to let him introduce himself to you because his body of work speaks for itself, and you will know him most for the 12-Step Buddhist. Welcome, Darren.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here to talk with you today.
You're so calm and quiet. It's so nice to have you on. Like, your energy is just, I just want to sit down and just relax.
You know, that's really beautiful that you say that because I grew up in a very chaotic environment with a very unstable, emotional, energetic situation, let's just say. And for me to hear someone of your esteem and reputation give me such a beautiful compliment is just, wow, it's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love it. I can't wait to have coffee with you next week or 2 weeks from now because I'm like on 11 all the time. That when I talk to you, it's like, okay, now take a deep breath, calm down. It's not a big deal. There's no rush to the next topic. Be in the moment. And I want to talk about that. How did you get centered? Because for most of us, life is not centering. Life is chaotic. For some of us, life is a shit show. How are you so centered? How'd you get there?
Well, the Zen teacher that I had probably about 15 years ago was also a clinical psychologist. And I remember sitting with him in the interview session that you have when you do a Zen meditation practice. You go in and sit with the teacher for a few minutes and maybe ask him a couple of questions or what have you. Anyways, I said to him, Larry, I can't handle it. My mind is so chaotic and everything's such a mess and it's a mental shit show, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, you're so lucky. So what are you talking about? He said, you have to practice.
Huh.
Most of us just do it because we think it's an interesting thing to do.
Right.
But for you, it's not a hobby. So necessity brought me to this point, and this is not an arrival point that I'm at that, okay, now I'm here and this is the way it's going to be. It's more like, as we would say in a 12-step program, it's about the daily maintenance of your spiritual condition, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
So, and a lot of the things that I talk about in my orientation, I really learned so much from 12-step for over 30 years. But in that context, we would say something like, I have to aspire every day to the heights of a normal person.
Oh,
in other words,
wow.
I have to do activities. Yeah, like I don't just wake up and open my eyes usually and everything's cool. I have to get up. I have to deal with chronic, acute, post-traumatic stress disorder of the complex variety. I've got to go down to my meditation cushion, light some incense, make some offerings, do some pranayama, breathing, some energy centering practices. And yeah, it's true that sometimes that carries me forward and say for a period of time, I don't really have to work that hard. I've got some good days. But for the past several decades, I've really had to strive relentlessly and not give up. I'm a super type A like you, and I really have had to work at not having to work at it. I've had to work at being able to get to a place of relaxation or a place of peace.
Well, it's definitely working because you're so chill and so calming. Like just being around you takes me down from 11 to an 8. Now I'm still at an 8. I need to be like a 4, but I'm at an 8. But just listening to your voice, because like even your voice inflection is just chill. Like, we're just going to roll through the day. It's just going to be okay. So it
might be because of all the weed I smoked. That may have shut down part of my, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, I missed the fact that it's legal in California. Now I'm 21 years sober and I don't get to indulge in having weed delivered to your house. I'm a little resentful about that. But yoga, I do yoga every day. I do heated power vinyasa at Core Power. I know it's a big corporate thing, but sometimes I do 2 classes a day. And the whole deal with yoga is to get embodied, get your experience, to a point where whatever distress you're experiencing, you just breathe through it.
Right.
And when you do that day after day, year after year, it changes your brain chemistry and it changes your equilibrium. And that's something that you can retrain your brain. Now, I also did, I'm going to say 2.5 years ago, I did start, getting the non-THC oriented, the non-THC formula rather of CBD and taking tiny amounts, little drops of that before bed or when I was feeling stressful. And I was told at the time by a couple of clinicians that if you do that with your yoga, you're actually going to build new neural pathways.
Interesting.
So you can train your brain to be in a calm state, and that can become what neuroscientists would call your default mode. You have a default mode network of circuitry in the brain where you kind of, it's where you're spaced out and your mind kind of drifts off and you're kind of wandering. Well, you can build that into a state of equilibrium with particular types of practices.
Very interesting. I started teaching, I got trained in 99 for yoga, but I don't teach the meditative variety. I teach the power yoga, the Ashtanga yoga. So I'm very body oriented. When it comes to the meditation piece, it's so hard for me to even just veg out that I like the whole CBD concept. That's pretty neat.
Well, when I first started with Core Power, I had a guy, that did Vipassana retreats. He would go to these 3-day, 10-day, month-long retreats where you basically sit for 12 hours a day. And he did power yoga right next to me. And he said to me, Darren, you get so jacked up in yoga. You get so hyper from the heat and the music and the mirrors and the girls and the power and the cardio. And you gotta meditate. That's the whole reason why we have yoga, is to put the body in a position of suppleness so that the mind can calm.
So let's talk about meditation, sir. What type of meditation do you do? Is it quiet? Do you use music? Give our listeners a feel for what it's like to be in your meditation space.
Well, welcome to the temple. Welcome to the nut house. I don't know. It depends on the moment. So I did Zen back in the late 80s, early 90s. And Zen, for people who don't know, is it's a non-dual, well, it's a technical term. We would call it a non-dual, Mahayana practice, which means that you're at one, with your compassion. So Mahayana, greater vehicle in Buddhism, means, hey, I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this for the benefit of all beings who suffer. We would say sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. That's what we call the Bodhisattva vow. So this is, the attitude of Zen is basically to sit. And then when your mind starts doing things I don't want to do this. What am I doing? I got things to do. Oh my God, I got to scratch my butt and I got to get some food and I got all kinds of things. Your mind starts getting hyper. You just go, basically, okay, cool. Just sitting. You keep reminding yourself and you coach yourself that way. really calmly. And, you know, in the traditional Japanese, the teacher might come by if you're, say, slouching and whack you with a bamboo stick or something, you know, but you basically learn to just sit and be present in your body. And what does that mean? The mind starts getting hyper, and my mind's on overdrive. I think about 12 streams of thought simultaneously. I used to have multiple conversations with people at the same time on 2 or 3 different topics. I've calmed that down quite a bit. So
that's quite a feat. I have trouble with like one conversation and not vegging out, but to have 3 or 4. Huh.
Yeah, I used to think that way because my mind, it's basically a little bit of a bipolar kind of a hyper mental or it's a hyper arousal, what we call in the window of tolerance in drug addiction treatment. So hyper arousal means that you're beyond baseline, and hypoarousal means that you're in a depressed kind of state. And, you know, being in that equilibrium point where you don't get jacked up or drop too low is sort of the goal. And really that's very Zen. You know, here it is. If you do run, say you're a runner, say you do a power yoga class, however you get your, you know, physicality going, right? Mm-hmm. And then you sit for a moment and you look at the blue sky and you take a deep inhale. Let's do this together. I'm going to teach you this one real quick. We're going to have an inhale from the bottom of the belly all the way into the heart, into the throat. You're going to fill up completely and hold. And then you're going to let go like this. And just release. Let's do this one time. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I can do this.
Super deep inhale. Fill it up all the way. Fill it up. Fill it up into your chest, into your throat. Now hold on to everything that you're never going to let go of. Fill it up. Now release. Pause empty. When you pause in that empty space and just letting your mind float free, and you connect with the spaciousness of the mind, you connect with the stillness of the body, and you connect with the silence of your speech. Linger there as long as you feel comfortable. And then you can do the breath again, or you can say return to focusing on your body. So this is a kind of an integration, but the Zen practice is based on non-duality. In other words, there's no me looking at the world. There's just the breath. There's just breathing. And you really try to let your mind be calm while you be present. And that's the training that I started doing. You know, 15 years into that, I got with the Tibetan Buddhists. They're ringing bells and chanting and making noise, and they're stepping on your cushion, and they're chatty, and they're talking about all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, hey, when do we meditate? You know? I thought this was Buddhist. You know, well, that's because they're tantric, and tantric means, you know, a continuity or a continuum of energy and working with the flow of energy, not trying to just make yourself sit still. That's a different kind of meditation, which you're probably familiar with as an Ashtangi, because you are doing a moving meditation. You are breathing with your movement, and that's an integration with your life as it is as well. It's a Zen, but it's like Zen level 2, because you're bringing your mindful awareness into the movement. You're not forcing yourself to have to sit still in order to get there. Does that make sense? That
makes perfect sense, because I've always been like walking meditation. Every time I've tried to sit, it doesn't work for me. My body's like screaming. You have to be in motion. You have to move the energy. Energy is not still. You cannot be still. So when I do the yoga, I can meditate on a whole different level because I'm in the motion. And when I'm done, I actually get energy when I'm done. And most people are like, I'm so exhausted. It was hot. And I'm like, what? I'm ready to go dancing. Like, I'm ready to go party. You know, boom. I feel great. So
I see why you have a rock and roll drummer husband.
You see it now?
I'll bet he can't keep up with you. So
he's worse than me. He's on 11 well, now he's a little older. He sleeps by 8 o'clock, but it used to be, he was like, let's go here, let's go there. And he'd run circles around me, but you know,
well, you know, what you say about the movement though, this is really interesting. In my trauma studies, and where I study trauma for my new compassionate recovery work and so forth, the anatomy of the body is all meant to propel you forward. The anatomy and structure and functionality of the brain at the deepest levels is meant to propel you forward. Everything about our physicality is meant to survive, to seek, to hunt, to acquire, to provide safety. And that's the way our species has evolved. That's the way, mammals have evolved, and even, reptiles. And the whole idea is to go forward and propel. Well, the reason why we're conscious and why we have the opportunity from a Buddhist perspective, for example, is that we can be aware of ourselves. So we're the only ones that are, theoretically, at least as we know, the only ones of all the different types of species that are, we're self-aware. So we can say, hey, I know I'm a power yogi and I've got 47 things on my agenda, but I choose to be present in my body and connect with the spaciousness of mind right now. And when we do that, we notice that, at least I do, it's almost like you're carrying like a million streamers behind you. Like those streamers the kids would have on their bikes, like in the 50s or something. And you're racing, and then you stop. And all of that stuff just like comes and wraps itself all around you and starts moving around in your head, and you're like covered with all these feelings and noises and sensations. But after a while, you begin to inhabit. You kick into the brain circuitry called the embodiment circuitry. That's what my friend Jim Hopper talks about at Harvard. And you get into that sense of embodying your experience in. There's a thing in Buddhism, what we call the 8 worldly concerns, which is basically anything that you worry about all day. Like eating, getting your money, and taking care of your family, all the type of things that everybody does all day long, right? There's a way, as my friend Narissa says, to find peace amidst the 8 worldly concerns. So all this shit's going to keep going. The world's going to keep being hyper. I mean, Trump's going to be Trump, and CNN, and the shootings and the craziness, and, natural disasters, and people are dying as you get older. And, it's all going to be a shit show 24/7 forever. So what are you going to do? Are you going to jump in the toilet bowl and spin around? Or are you going to be the water flowing? Does that make sense? That might sound a little, martial arts like, but be the water. Well, I don't know if did you have Bruce Lee when you were a kid?
You just did an analogy with a toilet bowl. So I kind of like it. Would you want to get in the shit show of life and swirl around with the toilet bowl? Or do you want to be the solution? These are your options. I like it. I could work with that. That just came to me right now, and you inspired it. Great. I'll be known for that. Inspiration of toilet bowl chatter. Love it. It really is the truth, though. Doesn't it make sense? Like, the world's going to keep spinning. Well, yeah. And you can get in or get out. What do you want to do? Well, there's not really a getting out. See, that's the difference. So most people have that. It's sort of the mistake of meditation, thinking that I've got to shut myself down. I've got to stop myself. You can't. Your cells are going to keep doing their thing at the molecular level. All the things are going to keep going. But there's a thing called conscious awareness, what the yogi Nisargadatta would have, called the I am. It's more of a Hindu perspective, but I am, I am. Right. And you're basically gonna be that. Here I am in my body. Here I am in my mind. Here I am in my heart and soul. How do I want to be? Now, from this place of mindful, non-judgmental awareness, I can do things like I can practice self-compassion. I can put my hand on my chest and say, may you be at ease. I mean, there's a lot of practices I can do to learn how to inhabit the body in a way that's more comfortable. Right. So let me ask you this question. You mentioned compassionate recovery. And I know that's your new school, your new, educational piece. Is that where this is coming from? Is it trying to slow the world down a little bit and say, let's shift our thinking from being chaotic and being in the problem, and let's be more in the solution? Just out of curiosity. Well, it definitely is. And this is the direct admonition of one of my teachers, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's a Tibetan master. And after I had put out the 12-Step Buddhist in 2009, he had supported it, and he'd written a blurb for it and so forth. And I brought him. I was so proud. I walked up to him one day and I had the book in hand at a teaching, and I said, Rinpoche, that's what you call your Tibetan master. Rinpoche, here's the 12-Step Buddhist. Thank you so much for helping me develop it. And I asked him, I said, I've got these weekly groups at the Zen Center, and I've got these retreats I'm doing, and people are contacting me from all over the world.
what do I teach them? And he leans over and cocks one eye open and says, teach them about compassion. And that vibration, that was a decade ago. And that vibration of those words is still flourishing. It's still blossoming in my consciousness. Like what he meant is still coming to make some kind of sense to me.
Yeah, very interesting. That brought something to me. They were talking about other countries, how they put yoga and compassion in elementary schools. So like if a kid pushes another kid, they teach them yoga and meditation and compassion for the other person as opposed to punishing the bully. And we're seeing more and more and more in these other countries how there's no bullying. The kids embrace each other, and it starts with compassion at a young age to understand what someone else who looks different or acts different is going through.
Yeah, and the whole deal about brain development and adverse childhood experiences is pivotal to understand, how we are who we are when we're adults. So the earlier that you start teaching things like compassion and, equanimity and loving kindness and forgiveness, the earlier you start, the better humans you're going to grow. Right. And, for those of us like myself who grew up, as I mentioned, in a difficult environment, a mental illness in my family and alcoholism and domestic violence and, a sense of unrest, no validation, some abuse, some neglect, all these things. Well, it really layers on your brain, and your brain's supposed to develop to learn how to connect with other beings socially, to learn how to acquire new information and evolve and develop into a socially functioning, integrated human being. Well, when things get, destroyed or damaged or neglected in that developmental process, you layer on problems that become the basis for further problems. So that's how come kids wind up with ADHD and, going into substance misuse, as we call it now, and having depression and cutting and all these kinds of bullying and, all violence and all this kind of stuff. So the idea that you can go back in and rewire the brain with some of these contemplative practices is really the root, because the PTSD or the trauma is at the core of addiction, and you can do something about it. We used to think, as you know, that the brain was static. Like, there's your brain cells, don't burn them out, you're not going to get any more. We know that's not true now. We can actually develop new neural pathways, new networks. I mean, look at me. If you'd have seen me running down the street, screaming bloody murder, racing up to someone's car, pounding my fists on it in the pouring rain, screaming unintelligibly. And then you can talk to me now. How did I go from there? That was many years ago, but how did I go from being a raging drug addict, alcoholic, to being somebody that, the lovely Dr. Esty says, hey, wow, you're super chill, I want to hang out with you. Well, I was able to because I can retrain my brain. That's the whole point of what we know from the neuroscience nowadays. And what the Buddhists and yogis have been doing for thousands of years.
Let me interrupt you and ask you this question, because this fascinates me. I've been a clinician for 20-some, it's like 25, but we won't say that. We'll say 20-some, because I'll show my age, years. Sure. What makes...
You don't look it, by the way.
Good, that's good. I like that. Thank you. See, you're my new favorite person now. That's awesome. Here's my question. So we know this. We know, we're talking about it. We know you can retrain your brain. We know there's CBD oil. There's, meditation. There's yoga. There's all these things you can do to fix the damage to your body, your mind, and your spirit. Here's my question to you. Why don't more people access this? Why do people sit around and say, well, I'm stuck like this. I can't do anything about it. It's not my fault. I'm just going to pretend it's going to go away. Why don't more people harness this stuff out there?
Well, it's like you said earlier, it's a different cultural experience in the West. And we're driven towards that fierce, independence and, pushing ahead and being an entrepreneur and, getting mine. That whole thing that's just fed to us, we download it constantly from birth. So, why would we? And here's the thing. None of the stuff I'm doing and writing about is, well, a lot of the brain stuff is new, but these practices are ancient. So the problem is we don't know about it. Awareness is the first part of healing. If you look at, even the 12 step, the first thing, I'm aware that I don't have any control over this, say, alcohol or what have you,
Right.
Your awareness, it has the power to heal. So as soon as I become aware of what I'm experiencing, say I'm experiencing fight or flight or panic or distress or hyper arousal, something like that. As soon as I become aware of that in my body, then there's a natural mechanism of realignment and healing that's possible. So it starts with awareness. And if we're not taught this, and that's why, I think that's why, even though yoga is super westernized and corporatized and watered down in a lot of ways, I think there's a lot of power, a tremendous amount of power. I don't want to understate that. And the fact that we have millions and millions of people flocking to yoga, and also flocking to things like, Pilates and CrossFit and all this kind of stuff, because you're pushing forward, you're using the part of you that's not calm to push yourself forward to get into a state where it's like, oh, hold on a second. I just had 2 seconds of peace. I like that. I want more. Whether it is, like I said, from doing a CrossFit workout and then having that couple moments of calmness at Starbucks afterwards or whatever, or doing a yoga class and winding up in your Shavasana corpse pose at the end.
I'm just going to stop you for a second. Starbucks does not calm me down. Starbucks pisses me off. Just saying.
I see.
Our Starbucks here, you wait in line for 15, 20 minutes. All of the workers talk. Nobody waits on you. I'm going to start practicing my meditation now that you've taught me in line and let you know how I do. Because by the time I get to order, I want to kill somebody. There's no calming going on. I just wanted to point that out.
I think that you should just order from the app and pick it up at the end of the bar, because then you don't have to talk to anyone.
I think that's a great idea. Outside the box thinking. Just go on the app. Don't deal with the people. Skip to the end of the line. I'm going to try that.
I'm not in a people mood today. And so basically the reason why we're not calm is because we're not aware of it. And what I'm trying to do with compassionate recovery is bring it all together. Here's the brain science of trauma, the brain science of substance abuse, and the brain science of contemplative practices. Here's really simple, easy stuff that you can practice. And as soon as you start practicing it and having a social network to practice it with, you're going to feel better and do better. And most importantly, you're going to look better. I think that's the key.
I love it. Now, you're going to be teaching this in the Compassionate Recovery courses, correct?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So I will be joining you because I want to learn all this stuff and how to stand in line at Starbucks and not want to kill somebody. That's top of my list. So
there's a Buddhist practice that one of my main teachers, Venerable Robina, she's an Australian nun. She says, Darren, zip your lip and keep your hands to yourself.
Oh my God. See, that brings up my PTSD. I was in Catholic school for 6 years, and Sister Anne and the ruler, I have nightmares about Sister Anne and her ruler.
It's really the reason why so many people, it's a big reason why so many people don't look at contemplative and spiritual practices. What most people don't know is that there's a real mystical side to Christianity. And there are monks, the Benedictine monks, who will sit in meditation for hours and hours. And they contemplate the Bible, and that may or may not be your thing. But the reality is there is a mystical quality to a lot of the religious traditions that, unfortunately, there's these like psycho people that get in the job of being a priest or a nun and wind up molesting and beating kids, Yes. And unfortunately, somebody grabs the idea and goes, hey, it's a cool, mindfulness is really cool. So let's create an industry. Let's make mindfulness now, right? There's like thousands of books. Everybody's trying to do mindfulness, but it's outside the context of the ethics and everything that support the mindfulness, right? Because here's the thing. If you're rattled, if you're already like an edgy person and you begin to sit still, for me, this would happen the first few years of meditation is that I would get more raw. Does that make sense? I would get more agitated.
Yes.
The more still I got, the more I wanted to punch somebody in the face.
Because all the stuff comes up. All this garbage starts coming up, and you're like, what do I do with all this stuff?
Right. So that's why we want to have a framework, and that's why we want to have social support, and that's why it's great. It's a great idea to work with therapy. There's probably no modality in psychotherapy these days that doesn't incorporate some aspect of mindfulness, whether it's CBT, DBT, or what have you. So you want to have that support. Okay, I'm sitting here and being mindful. Now I want to kill somebody. Okay, well, what does that feel like for you? what just came up, having a therapist to help you with it, or having friends that are doing the same thing that you can talk to about it, having an online app where you can check in and go, hey, here's what's going on with me right now. I just did yoga and I'm not calm. God damn it. Social support is a mandatory piece of any type of spiritual and self-development. I mean, we are social beings. We cannot do it alone. Yet we're trying to be this fierce, independent, Protestant work ethic kind of, Americans. And really, it's antithetical to who we are as beings. We must coexist, like the hippie bumper stickers say. Coexist.
Right. Awesome. Well, when does your class start? When can people start accessing this? So they're looking forward to it. And I know you have some books. I know you have a lot of books available. So we'll put the links up on the podcast site so people can access your materials. And of course, how do they reach you? So when does the class start and how do they reach you?
Well, the class for Addictions Academy, I think we're talking about doing that in the fall. Am I right?
Correct.
And right now I'm finishing the manuscript for Compassionate Recovery. You can go to compassionaterecovery.net. You can go to the first site, the 12stepbuddhist.com, and you can see all the previous works and writings and so forth there. And I did just do a 10-year anniversary edition of that book, which will be out in the fall. And then the logical next step is this Compassionate Recovery movement. So I'm going to have on compassionaterecovery.net this summer a free getting started course.
Awesome.
So I'm hosting it myself, and you can go on there and you can understand some of the basic meditations and the ways to set up a support group and just how to get started with it. And then from there, we'll have our 7-week course that you and I are doing, and we'll build for clinicians the ideas of how to really teach this to your clients and other people in recovery so that this can, be a practice that's accessible and doable and really shows, because, the thing is with all this stuff is it's all what we call evidence-based now. You can look at studies that have gone on for years about what happens when you take this kind of person with this kind of situation and you put them in this kind of practice, and then how do they wind up after doing it for, a period of time, whether it's a month, 3 months, or longer. And you find that there are just a massive amount of improvements that are made into your mental state. So we're not just making this up. This is stuff that's been going on for a long time, but now it's scientifically validated. And I'm really excited to put it all in one place so that anybody, you don't have to be an addict to do compassionate recovery. You can be someone who's, say, heavily attached. You might be attached to Starbucks. You might be attached to hating Starbucks. You might be attached to politics. Whatever is causing you a problem at that level of attachment, all the way up to what I call attachment gone wild, which is severe addiction. So this is an open, universal, inclusive idea that anybody can tap into. Because, I used to do these retreats for the 12-step Buddhists, and I'd ask people what their addiction was, and a lot of people would come to the retreats and stuff and say, no, I'm just interested. Well, there are a lot of people that are not heroin addicts that were still interested in some kind of spiritual development that we would find in recovery. So with everyone in mind, I've tried to create this program that's universal, inclusive, trauma-informed, and evidence-based.
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to this. And Darren, we are out of time. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all this great information with us. And we will put links up to the giveaway. Is there any way you want them to contact you other than the website?
You can go to email, which is info@compassionaterecovery.net. You can find me on Instagram, which is @12stepbuddhist. That's 12stepbuddhist. And of course, Facebook. I'm always there. You and I are on Facebook. And I hope you feel did you get a little bit of Zen from that little practice that we did?
I did. I am Zened. I feel comfortable, relaxed. I'm still on an 8. Actually, I'm on a 9 now, but that's okay. I'll start doing some work with you, I think, and I'll be on a 4, and then I'll be like you, nice and relaxed.
Well, that's the idea, that you can start somewhere and you can start where you are.
That's awesome. Looking forward to it. Everyone, you have been listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. My guest today, Darren Littlejohn. Have a great and powerful week. Hey, Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. I took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from solid ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. No need to escape with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, shut at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To